There was a woman who came to my consulting room many years ago, and she carried with her a small velvet box. Inside that box rested a ring, old, slightly tarnished, inherited from a grandmother she had never met. She told me she could not stop touching it. She wore it on her index finger when she felt strong, on her ring finger when she felt lonely, and she removed it entirely on the day she wished to disappear. She had come to me believing she suffered from a nervous condition. But I listened to her story for a long time, and I understood that her condition was not nervous at all. Her psyche had simply found a small, circular vessel through which it could speak to her, and she had not yet learned the language. The objects we are drawn to are never accidents. The colors that catch our eye, the shapes that calm us, the metals that warm against our skin, these are messages from a deeper layer of the psyche, a layer I have spent my life trying to map. And among all the small objects a woman might carry, the ring has always held a particular weight. It is a circle, and the circle is the oldest symbol of wholeness humanity has ever known. To place such a circle upon the body is to make, often without realizing it, a statement about who one is and who one is becoming. So today I would like to invite you into a small experiment. I am going to describe several rings to you. You will not see them with your eyes, you will see them with something deeper. As I describe each one, you will feel something. One of them will pull at you. The ring you choose without thinking will tell you something about the feminine archetype currently alive in your soul. Whether you are a woman or a man does not matter here. For the feminine principle, the Anima, lives within every human being. What we are about to discover is which phase of her is speaking to you now. The unconscious does not speak in essays. It speaks in images, in symbols, in the sudden tightening of the chest when a certain word is spoken. When I ask you to choose a ring, I am not asking your intellect. Your intellect will try to be clever. Your intellect will try to choose what sounds most flattering. I am asking instead the part of you that dreams, the part of you that remembers things from before you were born. That part rarely gets to speak. Today it will be given a voice. Now imagine, if you will, a wooden table. The table is old, slightly worn at the edges, and it sits in a room with a single window. The light falling through that window is the light of late afternoon, that golden slanted light that seems to make ordinary things sacred. Upon this table, 5 rings have been placed. Take a moment, breathe, do not rush. The first ring is made of gold, but not the bright polished gold of jewelry shops. This is older gold, soft, deep, the color of late harvest wheat. Set into the gold is a single red stone, a garnet perhaps, or a deep ruby, that seems to hold a fire within it. The band itself is engraved with small vines and tiny figures that suggest both fertility and protection. When you look at this ring, you feel something maternal, something abundant, something that has fed many and would feed many more. The second ring is silver, and it is delicate, almost weightless. It seems woven rather than cast, as if a spider had spun it from moonlight. Set into the band is a small pale stone, opal or moonstone, that shifts color when the light moves. There is something young about this ring, something untouched. Looking at it stirs in you a sense of beginnings, of possibilities not yet spent. The third ring is dark, almost black. It is forged from some heavy metal, and at its center sits a stone the color of a deep forest at twilight. The band is rough, unpolished, with markings that look almost like runes. There is nothing soft about this ring. It does not seek to please. It seems to belong to a woman who walks alone in places where others fear to go. The fourth ring is bronze, warm and reddish, and it carries a stone of pale green. Around the band are carved small leaves, vines, the tracks of small animals. It smells somehow of earth and rain. It is not refined. It is not delicate. It is alive in the way a forest floor is alive, teeming with hidden growth. The fifth ring is the simplest of all. It is a plain band of white gold or platinum, with no stone, no engraving, no ornament. And yet it is the most difficult to look away from. There is a stillness to it, a completeness, as though it had nothing to prove and nothing to hide, as though it knew itself entirely. Now, without thinking too long, which one did your eye return to? Which one made your hand wish to reach? Hold that ring in your mind. We are about to walk together into what it means. The figure that haunts you in your dreams, the one you cannot quite see clearly, has always been yourself, not the self you show to the world, not the self listed on your documents, but the inner woman, the inner feminine, who lives beneath all your roles and disguises. She has many faces, and each ring on that imagined table corresponds to one of her faces, one of the great archetypal patterns the feminine soul has worn since the beginning of human time. Let us begin with the first ring, the deep gold with the red stone engraved with vines. If your hand reached for this one, the archetype currently alive in you is the one I have called the Great Mother. She is the oldest of the feminine figures, older than civilization itself. The first images humanity ever carved into stone were of her, those small, full-bodied figurines from the caves of Europe, faceless but unmistakable, all womb and breast and belly. She is the source. She is the one who feeds, who shelters, who holds. She is also, and this is crucial, the one who can devour. For every great archetype contains its shadow, and the mother who nourishes is also the mother who can suffocate, who can refuse to let her children grow, who can wrap her love so tightly around another that it becomes a cage. If you chose this ring, something maternal is awake in you now. It may be that you are caring for others, children, parents, friends, communities. It may be that you are creating something that requires a long incubation, a book, a project, a home, a vision. It may be that you yourself are the one who needs mothering, and the psyche has summoned this archetype to remind you of what you have not received. The Great Mother teaches generosity, but she has another harder lesson. She teaches the difference between giving and giving oneself away. I once worked with a woman who had spent 30 years pouring herself into her family. She had loved them with a devotion that would have made saints weep, and yet she came to me hollow. She told me she did not know who she was anymore. She had become so completely the mother that the woman beneath the mother had nearly disappeared. We spent many months retrieving her. The work was slow, but what surprised her most was this. As she rediscovered her own self, her family did not collapse. They flourished. For a mother who has herself is a different gift to her children than a mother who has only them. But the most surprising part is yet to come. For if you chose this first ring, there is a question your unconscious is asking you. The question is this: who in your life right now are you mothering at the expense of your own becoming? It may be a person. It may be an institution. It may be a version of yourself you outgrew long ago and yet still tend to. The Great Mother in her wise form gives life, but she also knows when to release. Now let us turn to the second ring, the delicate silver, woven like moonlight, with its pale shifting stone. If this is the ring that drew you, the archetype alive in you now is the one I have spoken of as the Maiden, or in older terms, the Kore. She is the young feminine, the one who stands at the threshold of becoming. She is Persephone before she descended into the underworld. She is the girl in the fairy tale who has not yet met the witch in the forest. She represents possibility, freshness, the soul that has not yet been wounded enough to forget how to wander. There is a great misunderstanding about the Maiden. People sometimes believe she belongs only to the young in years. This is not so. I have known women in their 70s who carried the Maiden in their eyes, and women in their 20s who had already buried her under layers of weariness. The Maiden is not a matter of age. She is a matter of openness. She is the part of the psyche that still believes something new can happen, that love is possible, that a path can appear where there was none. If you chose the silver ring, this part of you is stirring. Perhaps after a long sleep, perhaps you have been weighed down for many years by responsibilities, by disappointments, by the slow sediment that life lays upon all of us. And yet something is waking, a curiosity, a wish to begin again. The Maiden does not ask for permission. She simply rises, like a young plant pushing through stone. But here we must speak honestly. The Maiden has her shadow too. Her shadow is the woman who refuses to grow, the eternal girl, the Puella Eterna, who flees from every commitment, every depth, every shadow, who keeps all options open and therefore chooses nothing, who confuses freedom with escape. If the maiden has come to you, ask yourself whether she is calling you toward genuine renewal, or whether she is tempting you to flee from a responsibility your soul has already accepted. What Jung said about this dynamic was deeply unsettling, and I will say it to you plainly. The woman who never crosses the threshold remains forever at the threshold. She does not get to keep her innocence, she only gets to lose her years. The true work of the maiden is not to remain a maiden. It is to walk consciously into the deeper chambers of the soul, knowing that something will be lost, and trusting that what will be gained is worth that loss. Now let us speak of the third ring, the dark band, the black stone, the rough markings that look almost like runes. If this ring called to you, the archetype walking in your psyche, is one of the most powerful and most feared of all the feminine figures. She is the wise woman. She is the crone. She is what the old cultures called the hag, though this word has been corrupted in modern languages. In its original meaning, the hag was the holy one, the seer, the woman who had passed through enough fires to no longer fear them. Hagia in Greek means sacred. The Hagia Sophia, the great cathedral, means holy wisdom, and that wisdom was always feminine. This archetype is the one who knows, not the one who learns, not the one who studies, but the one who simply knows. She has lived through enough seasons to recognize the patterns. She has buried enough illusions to no longer mistake them for truths. She is the woman in the fairy tale who lives at the edge of the village, whom everyone fears, and yet whom everyone visits in secret when they are truly desperate. She is the witch, but understand, the witch in her original sense was not evil. She was the wise one, the herb knower, the midwife of both bodies and souls. If you chose the dark ring, something in you has matured beyond what the surface world acknowledges. You may be young in years and still carry her, for she comes early to those who have suffered early, or you may have lived long enough to feel her settling into your bones. Either way, your soul has been baking in some inner fire, and what is emerging is no longer the maiden, no longer even the mother, but the seer, the one who has stopped lying to herself. The shadow of this archetype is bitterness. It is the woman who, having seen through illusions, becomes contemptuous of all who still hold them, the cynical one, the one whose wisdom has soured into wound. If the wise woman has come to you, the question to ask is whether she is bringing you into a deeper compassion, for compassion is what wisdom finally becomes when it has fully ripened, or whether she is hardening you against a world that has disappointed you. And here begins the darkest game of the unconscious, for the wise woman knows things the conscious mind would rather not know. She knows when a relationship is finished, even when the heart is still pleading. She knows when a path has ended, even when the legs wish to keep walking. She knows the difference between hope and denial, and most of us have spent some of our lives confusing the two. To accept this archetype is to accept the burden of seeing clearly. It is not a comfortable gift, but it is the gift that finally sets the soul free. Now to the fourth ring, the bronze, warm and earthen, with its pale green stone and its carvings of leaves and animal tracks. If this ring chose you, then the archetype rising in your soul is the one I have come to call the wild woman. Some have called her the forest mother. Some have called her Artemis or Diana, or in other lands by the names of older goddesses whose sanctuaries lay deep in the woods. She is the feminine in her natural, undomesticated form. She is the part of the soul that did not sign the social contract. The wild woman remembers something the modern world has tried very hard to make us forget, that we are animals, that we have bodies, that we are part of the earth, not separate from it, that our intuitions, our instincts, our sudden knowings are not weaknesses to be overcome, but ancient compasses to be trusted. She is the woman who knows when something is wrong before any evidence has arrived. She is the woman whose body refuses to enter a room she should not enter. She is the one who in dreams runs through forests on four legs. If you chose this ring, you are being called back to something you may have lost touch with. Perhaps you have been living too much in the city of the mind. Too many spreadsheets, Too many calculations, too much careful reasonableness. Your soul is asking for the wilderness. This does not mean you must move to a forest, though some who hear this call do exactly that. It means you must let some wildness back into the structure of your days, movement, touch, smell, the willingness to act on instinct without first justifying yourself to the committee of voices in your head. The detail most people overlook hides precisely here. The wild woman is not chaotic. People imagine wildness as the absence of order, but the wilderness has the deepest order of all, the order of seasons, of migrations, of the slow logic of growing things. The wild woman is not opposed to discipline. She is opposed to artificial discipline, the one that comes from outside. She is in service to a deeper discipline, the one that comes from within, from the body, from the rhythms the conscious mind did not invent. Her shadow is the one who confuses wildness with mere defiance, the woman who says no to everything in order to feel alive, who mistakes rebellion for freedom. The wild woman, in her wise form, does not need to oppose anything. She simply lives by her own laws, and most of those laws were written long before the world we live in was built. The real turning point begins right here, for if the wild woman has come to you, the question is no longer how to fit in, it is how to listen. Specifically, how to listen to that voice within you that has been speaking, sometimes for years, in the language of bodily symptoms and dreams and sudden inexplicable resistances. She has been speaking. The question is whether you have been willing to hear. And now the fifth ring, the simplest, the plain band. No stone, no engraving, no ornament, and yet impossible to look away from. If this ring drew you, then what is awake in you is the deepest of all the feminine archetypes, the one toward which all the others ultimately point. I have called this in my work the self, though the word is too small for what it names. She is the wholeness within. She is the inner sovereign. She is the woman who has integrated the mother and the maiden and the wise one and the wild one, and stands now as something larger than any of them alone. The self does not advertise. This is why the ring is plain. The self has nothing to prove, because she has stopped needing to be anyone in particular. She is simply who she is, and that is enough. She has passed through the underworld and returned. She has known loss and not been destroyed by it. She has met her own shadow and not turned away. She has, in the language of the alchemists, completed the great work, the opus magnum within herself. Very few people who choose this ring have actually arrived at this archetype. Most who choose it are responding to something in themselves that recognizes this as the destination, even though the journey is far from over. This is not a diminishment. To recognize the self, even from a distance, is itself a form of grace. It means that some part of you knows where you are going, even if your conscious mind has not yet been told. If you chose the plain band, your soul is calling you toward integration, not perfection. For the self is not perfection, and anyone who tells you the spiritual journey ends in perfection is selling you something. Integration, the willingness to stop dividing yourself into the parts you accept and the parts you reject. The willingness to bring the disowned home, the maiden who fled from depth, the mother who gave too much, the wise woman who hardened, the wild woman who was caged. All of them brought back into the great circle, which is the meaning of the ring itself. What mythology has been trying to tell us for centuries is precisely this. The journey of the soul is not a journey outward, but a journey inward. And at the end of it, what we find is not a stranger, but the original face we had before we were born. The Sufis spoke of this, the Zen master spoke of this, the alchemists spoke of this in the symbol of the philosopher's stone, which was never a literal stone, but the realized self, the gold that was always there, hidden inside the lead of ordinary existence. What I have described is not a fixed identity. The archetype that called to you today is the one alive now in this season of your life. In another year, perhaps, another ring would have drawn you. The feminine soul moves through these stations, sometimes circling back, sometimes leaping forward. What matters is not which one you are. What matters is that you have stopped pretending you are no one in particular, and have begun to recognize the deeper figure walking with you through your days. Modern man has lost his gods, but not his need for them. And modern woman has lost her own deep figures, but not her need for them either. This is why so many women in our time feel a strange grief they cannot name, a sense that some part of themselves has been amputated, till they cannot point to where. They have been given roles, but the roles do not match the depths. They have been told who they should be, but no one has told them who they are. The work of recovering the inner feminine, and this work belongs to men as much as to women, for the anima within the male soul has suffered the same fate, is one of the central spiritual tasks of our age. When I look at the patterns of our collective neurosis, the anxiety, the exhaustion, the strange emptiness even amidst abundance, I see again and again the wound of the abandoned feminine. The mother reduced to provider, the maiden reduced to image, the wise woman reduced to caricature, the wild woman reduced to fantasy, the self reduced to self-improvement. Each archetype, when it is shrunken in this way, takes its revenge upon the psyche. And the symptoms we call modern illness are very often the cries of these shrunken figures, asking to be released into their full size. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The archetype you did not choose to embody will, if it remains unconscious, embody itself through you anyway, usually in distorted form. The unembodied mother becomes the woman who cannot stop fixing other people. The unembodied maiden becomes the woman who cannot commit to anything. The unembodied wise woman becomes the woman who is bitter without knowing why. The unembodied wild woman becomes the woman who collapses periodically into rage or depression for no apparent reason. The unembodied self becomes the woman who feels, no matter what she achieves, that she is somehow living the wrong life. The medicine is not to deny these figures. The medicine is to invite them in, to sit with them, to let them speak in dreams, in journal pages, in long walks, in the small voice that comes when the noise dies down. They are not enemies. They are exiled parts of yourself. Returning home, the ring, in all the traditions I have studied, has always meant the same thing, a binding, a vow. Not a vow to another person necessarily, but a vow to a particular form of being. When a woman in an ancient ritual was given a ring, she was being marked as belonging to a certain mystery, a certain goddess, a certain way. The ring you imagined yourself reaching for is in this old sense a vow your soul is asking you to make, a vow to mother yourself, perhaps, as fiercely as you have mothered others, a vow to begin again when everything in you said the time for beginnings was past, a vow to listen to the wise one within, even when her counsel is uncomfortable, a vow to let yourself be wild, in a world that pays well for tameness, or a vow to come home, to the wholeness you suspected you had lost, but which had been waiting all this time beneath the surface of your days. I have seen many people in my consulting room over the years. I have seen them at the height of success, hollow. I have seen them at the depths of failure, radiant. I have seen them old in body and new in soul. I have seen them young in years and ancient in spirit. And what I have come to believe after all these decades is this: there is no destination in the human journey except the becoming of who one already is. The whole work, the long, beautiful, sometimes terrible work, is the slow remembrance of an original self that was never truly lost, only forgotten. I leave you with this question, which has always, in my experience, opened a door that needed to be opened. What part of you have you not yet given a ring to? What part of you has been waiting, perhaps for years, perhaps for a whole lifetime, for you to take her seriously, to bind yourself to her, to stop pretending she does not exist? When you find her, and you will, if you keep looking, do not flinch. She has been patient. She has been waiting. The unconscious is patient, but it does not wait forever. And the ring is still on the table where you saw it. Whether you reach for it now, or in a year, or in a decade, the choice is yours. But know this: the figure who placed it there has been watching you for a very long time. And she is, in every way that matters, you.